is they want gratitude and appreciation for when they're doing things right, and they want opportunities for growth. And if we think just intuitively at our own experiences, that's really what we want. You know, we want to know if we've done something good, that someone says thank you, or, you know, great job, and getting very specific on it. So not saying, oh, that was a great show, Kathy. It's, you need to be more specific. Oh, that was great, I got this out of it, right? So it makes it very relevant. And then the opportunities for growth, like if someone comes with an idea, letting them run with it. One of the toughest things sometimes is letting them do that and giving them some resources and support. And when they don't make it, and then it's kind of in the debrief, you have to talk about, so what was the learning? Because it's still forward progress, even though you may not have hit whatever the mark was that they wanted for themselves or accomplished that goal, they're still learning in all of it. So I think a big part of what we try and do, and what I personally try and do, is really have kind of a growth mindset. That's Carol Dweck's research out of Stanford, and take a learning orientation to everything, realizing that, you know, we aren't going to win it all. You know, we just need to know that we're winning more, and, you know, taking more forward momentum and creating positive impact as we do it.
Thank you very much once again. I think impact is another big issue when we consider the high performance and leadership aspect. We can make impact at the team level, just like you point us to how we can be high performing team, and it can be at the national level as well. And when we extend beyond that, we want to make global impact, we should obviously what everyone is trying to do, even though it's within our office or in our small room, we try to make sure that we are contributing something to the world. So in terms of advice for like senior management team, for leaders, for owners of business, and other people in managerial position, what could you suggest that can help to leverage that global leadership aspect?
I, I think it's two things, and it depends on where in the process. So early on, you want purposeful goal striving, and this is, let me, I think it's, was it Eric Mountain Lee in 2013 talked about this, and it's the theory of purposeful work behavior. And so where there's a goal or a key performance metric that a team or organization is working towards, if it has a sense of purpose in, and it's that impact factor, people are more likely to get behind it. And it may have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the company or organization itself. And the other is they get involved with an organization, and as they're doing it, they have experienced meaningfulness. So one is kind of before the start of doing something, and the other is you get in and you start doing it and you see the impact that it's having on people, or the feeling you have of, wow, this is real cool, and that experience meaningfulness, that it's not just the thing you're doing, that it has a deeper connection. And again, this is those higher order principles that we bring to the world. Yeah, I think it's ingrained in our, at a spiritual level, if I can even go there.
Okay, go on. Let's hear about that spiritual level a little bit from you. So how can we embed that into?
Well, I think it needs to be whatever works for the leader. What I've done, you know, my long-term vision is to change the world through education and entrepreneurship. And one of the tangible things that we want to do is provide education and opportunities for children in disadvantaged areas of the world to get an education, because for them, it's their way out of poverty, extreme poverty. entrepreneurship and certain other roads because of systemic issues keep them from doing that. But if we can, either sponsor children to go to school, which is something we're doing now, and ultimately in the next 3 years, we want to have the organization at a level where we can literally be investing in the infrastructure of building schools around the world, one school a year that allows children to have a better life and through education. And then it has a social entrepreneurship model around that, in that we want them, the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, extended family are working as well. So we set up some entrepreneurial model, because a lot of groups go in and will build infrastructure, but the problem is the cost of operations are what's high. So it starts and then it never sustains itself. And to me, that would be very sad. It's not how we start, it's how we finish. So we want something that's sustainable. So something we've done is set up sewing centers, for instance. And what that does is you have the people who are helping, with the ongoing operational side. They're learning a trade. They get at least 1 or 2 good meals a day that they weren't getting before. And by learning the trade, they're able to go out and get a job maybe with a tailor or someone like that. So they're making more and more money. So they're able to then maybe get out of the shanty town or the slum areas and get a house for them and their families, and be able to provide better. So, and part of the money for them doing that work is you sell the clothing or whatever to different organizations or whatever, and that money helps pay the operational costs. So that's my example.
That's great, because that actually is like an economic impact to employability, so which is a great contribution as well, going beyond the individual to economic and having economic impact. The other thing I would like you to touch on, because I'm just trying to read on the screen for some of the questions. What are some of the methods or the tools that you can point to help people out there that they can draw
Some
on?
of the
So,
mentors,
yeah, or tools if you.
um, so some of the mentors to me, oh boy, you know, there's formal mentors and informal mentors. So I think we can have those people who give direct contact to us, and a lot of times, those will be family or close friends or colleagues. That's where we see, at a foundational level, there was someone that made an impact that set someone on a course for life, and that's direct. But then there's indirect mentors. So this is people, maybe it's authors that wrote a book that changed the course of your life, and through their messaging and that, and following them and their beliefs and that, they're mentoring you in a different way. So I just think there's different ways to be mentored. Um, one thing we do with the Hot Performance Institute is we have peer mentorship groups. So as much as, you have your PhD, your doctorate, you obviously know a lot of stuff about, a lot of things. You don't get to that level without that. But one thing I've learned is the more I learn, the more I find I have a heck of a lot to learn. And it just exposes how much there's gaps. So with the peer advisory group, people can also call it mastermind groups, where you have a number of people and good ideas can come from anywhere. Focus groups, that's another way to do it. Mentorship, I know it has a more finite definition, but I wouldn't want people to limit themselves to one way of thinking about mentorship. There's a lot of ways to get that support, inspiration that mentorship provides. So hopefully I answered that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you did. Yeah. You mentioned mastermind, and I have one question pop up from the participant. If you can touch a little bit about that.
Okay. Uh, for me, I belong to a mastermind group, and this one has a business focus. I also have one that I belong to that has kind of the spiritual and filling my soul side as well. And again, the focus of those is different because of the people in the group, but also we just have a different focus. The benefit of that, I call it leveling up. When you come in, there's a synergy that's created, and there's science around masterminds. Um, you know, say there's 4 people in a group, it's not, 4 times 1 equals 4. It's not 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Hopefully that's 4. It's more like, it's 100. There's an exponential growth factor that comes with the idea of having more collective brains. And if we look at energy and that, uh, in a group dynamic with a mastermind, the group dynamic should be strong, that energy grows and creativity and thought goes up. Whereas we've also probably been in the situation where we're in groups where it sucked our energy and it brought us the other way. So group dynamics can either help us spiral up or spiral down. And I think from a leadership standpoint, one of the goals is to be aware of when it's possibly starting to spiral down, so you're going to have early warning signals to do a course correction and get it back on track and going forward, and then to really expand the level of influence when things are spiraling up in a very good way.
That's interesting. Thank you for drawing on your own experience. We really appreciate that. We have just a few more minutes to go, and I'm just going to pick some questions from the audience. And this one is quite interesting because this person asks, high performance leadership, is it the same or different across different sectors? For example, in private to public?
It's a good question. Let me ask, what do you think? What do you think? And then I'll give a stab at this.
For me, I think it's going to be different because drawing on the situational leadership theory, if you place a leader in a certain position, a certain situation, how that particular person will act and behave will be influenced by that project at hand in that particular time. Consider to placing that person in the different context or undertaking a different project. It depends on what the situation is at hand.
Right.
I think the really avenue is going to be quite different.
Right. And I think when I hear that answer, I know where that's coming from. That's through the lens of the theory of situational leadership.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? And you're right, like different situations, you will potentially lead different because there's context and reasons for that.
Yeah.
However, what drives performance, high performance leadership, I think crosses boundaries, because we see people who will leave an industry and go to another industry or a different environment, or go from for-profit to non-for-profit.
That's it.
Bill and Melinda Gates, there's a good example. You have a guy who was in tech and in business, and now is focusing the leadership on a philanthropic level. Warren Buffett, there's a lot of people who will cross boundaries. So some of the fundamental things around leadership that are foundational principles can be somewhat universal.
So it's a universal approach. You can apply it, even though the situation might be different, it can be applicable to different contexts.
Yeah, I think Thomas Jefferson is given credit for the quote, in matters of style, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. So I think situational leadership is that, you know, the style side. We have to adapt our style to context and situations. But the principles of leadership, we have to stand firm on. And that's, you know, caring. I think just caring about your people, what you do, and who you serve. It's never about the leader either. If it's one thing I've learned about leadership, it's not about the leader. The leader is one of the tools to get the performance and the impact, you know, for whoever's behind the organization or the following or movement.
Thank you very much. Interesting, Corey. Let's round it up by, succinctly drawing on what makes high performance leadership different from any other leadership style out there. So just give us maybe one or to just round it up.
Oh man, one thing that makes high performance difference then. I wish I had a great word for it, but it's a grit and a determination that just rips you from your being. It's when it's coming from deep within you. It's not your heart, it's not your head. Sometimes it's not even logical. Like if you think of the greatest leaders in the history, those iconic leaders that changed the world, they did things that didn't make logical sense, that a lot of people said couldn't be done, or, oh, don't do that. They do, you know, oh, don't set your sights too high. We don't want you to get hurt. They did it anyways because they were driven by this passion and vision and something that was beyond themselves. And I think that's what will ultimately separate, you know, those people, because then they work harder, their effort goes up, they're more inspiring, they're more caring, they're more resilient, they'll be more positive, and there's a level of determination and stick-to-itiveness that the majority of people just don't. You know, I say in the opening to my talks all the time, you know, we all have dreams of and goals that we want in our lives, but most of us fall short of whatever that big goal was. And why is that? And I think it comes down to two things. We give up too easy or too quick.
Too easy, too quick. Thank you. We've learned a lot from you just within 30 minutes. That's great. Thank you very much once again for turning up, for taking your time out to speak to us, to educate us. Really appreciate that. And use the remaining time to speak about yourself and Hope Institute. What do you do? Tell the people, tell the world how they can connect with you.
Thank you, Kathy. Hopperformanceinstitute.com. We do, most of what we do is corporate training and consulting. As you know, I'm finishing off my PhD at St. Mary's University in Halifax. That's where we had originally met, and developed a model, the HOP model for high performance, and it's basically an update to Latham and Locke's goal setting, the theory of, or the model for high performance, their high performance cycle and goal setting theory. I've done an update to bring in the drivers of performance, because a lot of times when you hear about performance, it's really goal setting. It's setting goals and key performance indicators and then measuring the outcome. Well, this is an outcome. This is a lagging measure. What I wanted to know is, well, what drives and gets us there? So, and we help individuals and organizations grow exponentially versus incrementally, because a lot of companies will look at, you know, if they did $1 million last year, they'll say, well, let's get a 10 to 15% bump. And I'm like, well, wait a sec. I think there's a better question. Like, rather than what percentage should we go by, I think a better question would be, are we actually $1 million company, or are we a $50 million company that's not there yet? Because then how you set things up and things you do will be a lot different. And you don't want to create your own limiting barriers. And I think schooling, systems and that have, maybe with great intentions, I'm not convinced of that yet, but have set limiting factors around what we can accomplish as individuals and organizations. And my goal is to really, well, you can see here, realize the power of what if, and bring out the potential in people and organizations. So I talk too much on that, but thank you.
You're welcome. You said become a game changer. Some people are not interested in game. What other word can you use for them?
Life changer. A life changer.
Interesting.
And so it could be your own life, but more importantly, how can you impact the lives of others? How can you change the lives of others for the better?
And that's what we're talking about today, performance leadership. How do we make impact? Thank you very much, Corey. I really appreciate that. And the audience also say thank you to you from the other end.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And from now, let me say goodbye to everyone. And if you have any questions, just post it through, and I will pass that on to.
And please email me.
Please, can you give your email address as well? So.
Yeah. Corey at hopperformanceinstitute.com. So COREYHOP performanceinstitute.com. I'd love to hear from you, and any feedback, and if I can help, I'd love to. Thank you.
So that's you hear from Corey. So you can connect with him. You don't have to go through me. This is a global self-education platform. We are quite open to sharing and exchanging knowledge. So feel free out there to connect with any speaker that we bring on board. Make you enjoy the most of it. Level up, just like Paul said, is an opportunity to leverage. We learn, we listen, and we leverage ourselves as well as leveling up. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you all. Bye for now. Thank you. You can watch this later on YouTube as well. We're going to post the video online.
Excellent. Love to see the link. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.